we're back again with another tutorial today, and today I've got a pair of Adidas tricolor NMDs here. These are super fresh. I actually love the way they look in general, but they look even fresher when they have a blacked out boost. So I'm going to show you guys exactly how easy it is to black out a boost material on any NMD or any Ultra Boost, or pretty much any white boost for that matter. And with that said, guys, let me go over a quick lineup here of exactly what you'll need. Today I have this Angelus Deglazer. It's a Prepare and Deglazer. I've got 507 leather dye, and that is by Angelus as well, but this is only available in California. If you're not in California and you need a dye, they also have a jet black leather dye, so that's the other option for you. I'm going to introduce something to you guys that a lot of people don't tell you about, and I'm going to give you two different options for it too, and those two options are these two right here. Let me scoot this over for you guys so you guys can see. So right here on my right side, on your left, is a leather dye reducer. This is a second option for you, and this is just denatured alcohol. You can get this from like a Home Depot or any hardware store. You can actually mess up your boost by oversaturating it with dye. So we'll get into that later, guys. Let me start off from the beginning. First things first, I'm gonna grab my Prepare and Deglazer, and we're gonna get started with that. Regardless of if they're brand new or not, I strongly recommend that you use a little bit of Prepare and Deglazer, and that's just to prepare and clean the surface up for you, so that way the dye can really be effective for you, okay? For me today, I've got a clean microfiber cloth, so that's what I'm gonna use, and I'm just gonna really quickly scuff through and make sure that I get all of the white portion here that I'm going to be dyeing, okay? It's important that you try to avoid other areas. I try my best to only get the areas that really need to have the leather prepare on it, okay? I've actually used acetone on this boost, and that's the best way to kiss your boost goodbye, because I've seen it actually start to eat up the boost. So tip number one, do not use acetone, yo. You don't have to use any kind of strong, really force into doing this preparation process. You're really just trying to ensure that the top coat is nice and clean and it's ready to go, okay? Because leather prepare and deglazer also does the same thing as acetone, meaning that it does clean and strip the surface, but in a lighter note. You still want to make sure that it's all dry before you start putting any dye or paint on it. I'm trying not to really touch the bottom of this block here, because even though it's black, I try to keep all of the factory colors and finishes the way they are. It's the best way to maintain integrity in the shoe. On this portion here, guys, I push in the 3 stripes so I can really make sure I get on the inside surface as much as possible as well. You guys might even want to try Q-tips for that. That's also very helpful because it's such a small surface. That's shoe number 1, guys. That took me about 5 minutes to do. Again, it was just a real simple process of going through the whole boost portion that I'm going to be dyeing out and making sure that it's completely free of any kind of toxins, oils, any kind of dirt, anything that will lessen the adhesion process of this dye to go on top of it. So this one's done, and since it's still drying out, I'm gonna just grab the next one and we'll just keep running with this. Again, guys, the dyeing process, a lot of people just think it's as simple as grabbing a brush and dipping it in dye and then just going through the whole shoe and just immersing the dye on top of the Ultra Boost. And I'll show you exactly why that's incorrect next. I've already put in, this is again 507 black dye, but jet black leather dye would work just as well. So I've gone ahead and dropped that 507 in here, and I've grabbed just a brush. And Angelus does have this box here, and when you pull the dye out, which I should have done actually, would have been a lot easier. they have a back portion here where you could just pop it in. See if I can do that real quick. Of course, it doesn't want to pop in when I need it to. But anyways, they've got a back portion here that you can pop in, and then you can insert the die into the box, and that's the way you should be doing it, because that will avoid any spills. Now again, if you spill dye, guys, I don't really know what to tell you besides I warned you guys that dye does not come out, okay? Let me jump into now just very lightly dipping the dye in here, and I'm just going through and I'm very gently starting to lay the dye out. Now if you guys notice, when I lay it out, I try not to dip this whole brush in a whole bunch of dye, and I'm very particular about how I angle my shoe, because gravity can very easily take over and fall in the direction you don't want it to go into. And now you've got, for example, jet black dye on your, gunmetal gray upper here. So as you notice, I'm very, very lightly just laying out the first layer of black, and I'm not oversaturating it. But if you lay this out with way too much dye pigment, guys, the dye doesn't dry into the boost correctly. It'll leave a wet layer on the top, and that is excess residue of dye, and you need to take that off before you jump into the next step of actually painting the boost material a black. When you're here on the 3 stripes, what I end up doing is I end up pushing the upper, so that way you can really creep in and try to get as close as possible into that crevice there. But I never try to force the dye all the way into it, and the reason I'll tell you why is because when you let go of this, what happens is the upper will slowly start to flail back into its original position, and that does have a tendency of touching that kind of upper half of the Ultraboost. So before you go and try to really get into the nooks and crannies of that section, I would recommend you just leave it alone and just try to get as close as possible to it without trying to affect those 3 stripes, because once you get dye on that 3 stripes, it's done. I'm gonna just flow through and just get this whole NMD boost done, and we're gonna jump onto the second shoe next.
Yo, told him my lungs get the nose running. Truth be told, I expose dummies. Take risks, cause scare money froze money. And the money make the honeys moist toes numbing. Fight or flight right, but I never chose running. Play the art of flight board with the snow bunnies. If you my homie, I'ma let you hold something.
So a lot of people think that if they oversaturate the Adidas NMD Boost sole with a bunch of dye, that it's gonna actually help make it darker or help fulfill the dye process faster. It actually doesn't, and I'll explain to you guys exactly why. So this Adidas Boost sole, it's a very interesting material because it is like it's almost like that styrofoam material that you get in like a packaging. That kind of styrofoam style material, it's not very porous, meaning it doesn't have any holes where paint or dye can really seep into it, okay? And because of that, we have to do this dye process. And I tell you that because if you don't do this dye process, and you should just say, forget it, I'm skipping all this stuff, and I'm just going to paint these guys black, what'll end up happening is that paint, if it ends up chipping, if you hit a curb or it starts to crack, you're gonna see the white underneath it. That's why this part of the process of getting these boost soles blacked out is very important, because if you chip a piece of your paint, you don't want to see white underneath it. It's going to look very, very shitty. So that's why I dye it out first. But before I start with the paint process, let me explain to you guys what I do, okay? Again, guys, I talked to you guys a little bit about this dye reducer by Angelus. This is actually going to be one of my first times using this guy here. But what I do is I'll take a little cup. Let me move these to the side so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'll just take a little bit of this dye reducer here. I'll pour it in. I don't take too much. I just take a little bit, okay? And let me explain to you guys what this dye reducer does and why important it is in this step, all right? The dye reducer, what it does is, I've let these guys sit overnight just to kind of dry. It's been 2 coats of dye on these. So what this dye reducer does, guys, is it will take any of the dye that hasn't dried overnight, that's just still kind of sitting on top of the surface of this Ultra Boost, we're gonna take that off right now, okay? If you don't take that extra dye off, it just kind of sits on the top of the surface and it's very slippery. So when you put paint on something that's slippery, it's gonna slip off, all right? This is exactly why this is very important. For those of you who are having that kind of experience in dye work already, if you've seen, for example, black dye turn purplish, or if you've seen other dyes turn kind of like a goldish bronze hue, it's because that area that you guys used, you oversaturated that area with too much dye, all right? Dye is very tricky to work with because number one, it's very, very watery and very concentrated. So you don't need a lot of it in one section to dye an area out. You actually want to disperse and lighten out the coats as much as possible. And then anything that's left over, the remnants, you need to take that off. If you don't take that off, then the paint won't adhere well, all right? So let me show you guys exactly what I do. As you guys can see, I've just got a clean Q-tip in my hand. And the reason why I use a Q-tip for this is because it's a very small surface area. So I'm not gonna use like a big old rag like this and then accidentally get dye on my shoes. That would be pretty dumb. So I actually have a lot more control with the Q-tip. I just dip the Q-tip in and I very, very gently just graze it across the entire surface that I blacked out, okay? That'll do two things. It'll take off any of the extra dye solutions that's just kind of sitting on top of the Ultra Boost material. But more importantly, guys, and you guys could see here, hopefully you can see that. That's dye that's coming off. That's excess dye that's coming off. The second thing it'll do, guys, it will take away that purple or gold hue that you've been wondering, why the hell do you have a gold hue on top of a black jet dye or some other, you know, purple or red. This is one of the ways to reduce the dye off of there and also take off that sheen on top of it that you probably don't want. So I'm looking at this one here and it has a slightly goldish sheen to it, but as I start to remove it, so I'll make a line here so then you guys can see the difference. Hopefully you guys can see that. I just did that in the middle right there and I placed the line about right here. And what it's doing is it's taking that bronze goldish tone off very gently. And we're also getting into the crevices because remember, this boost material, it's got a lot of like bumps. And because you have so many bumps, that gives any excess dye the opportunity to really soak into the cracks. When you're doing this, guys, make sure you're pushing back your 3 stripes here and really making sure that you don't accidentally get dye on the 3 stripes right when you're finishing this up because, well, that would suck. You're not getting that off at all. So switching up Q-tips, and I'm gonna just keep going with this, guys. So 3 Q-tips down, and I've got this guy reduced on dye, and we're ready to paint. But first, we gotta knock a second one out. This is a pair of Ultra Boost. One is dyed, and one is dyed and painted. So let's see if get a good close-up of that. The one that is dyed and painted is this guy right here. And the one here on the bottom, you can see here is only dyed. Okay? And the reason why I'm showing you guys this is because I want you guys to see the difference in blacks. You guys can see that the shade difference, even with the dye reducer, didn't take out all of the goldish color or purplish color, whatever you want to call it. It still has that tone to it on this shoe. That's why we got to paint this guy black, because I don't know about you, but you could actually walk around with this Ultra Boost and it'll be blacked out and you might be happy with it. But for me, I like to make sure that I get like a nice rich true black, and this guy here looks more like a factory look to it. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what I did with that shoe on this guy here. So first and foremost, I use flat black. And the reason I use flat black over regular black is because flat black has a matte tone to it, so it doesn't have a very shiny look to it. It actually dulls it out, and that's exactly what I want the black Ultraboost to look like. So that's what I'm going to get into next, is dropping this in, the flat black. And I actually, you know, as I realize this is a hard surface, I'm going to add a little bit of Too Hard in there as well, because it's not going to hurt, and it'll help adhere to hard surfaces, just like this Boost foam is. Okay, so I'm going to mix these two guys together, 1-to-1 ratio, easy enough, right? So let me take these two out, and I've got the matte finisher for the end product once we're done with the paint all drying and everything. Okay, guys, I've got a simple brush here. This is just like my dye brush. This is a flat 8, so just for your guys' reference, I'll be using the flat 8, and what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of black, drop it in this cup, and now I'm going to grab this Too Hard, just drop a little bit of that in there. Try to drop as many drops as the black. So again, it's not scientific, guys. I just dropped about a 1-to-1 there. All right, now we've got some Too Hard and flat black that's mixed together, guys. You could choose to go with just standard black. I prefer to give it a factory look. That's why I'm using flat black here. Okay. Now, again, as you guys can see here, this Boost. I'll start with let's start with the front, and I'm going to stop right here in the middle to show you guys the difference between the two blacks. Guys, the key to getting a nice clean finish at the end is to make sure you're providing very, very smooth, gentle, and light strokes throughout the whole shoe. That is just the front end painted in a black, and I stopped it right where the first Adidas line is. That's the red line there. It's your finished product. That's my second Boost there. That's all done. This is one layer in, guys. I'm gonna probably let this guy dry one more time and just go ahead and coat it with another very, very light glazed coat of black. I mean, you guys have assured that you did whatever you can to prep it right, to dye it correctly, and to paint it. And after this process is done, guys, we're still gonna seal it with the matte finisher. So let's let these guys dry for like 5 more minutes. I'm gonna hit it with another coat real quick, and I'll show you guys the finished product after we put on the matte finisher. All of the product links and all of the items that I used today will be down below in the description. So while you're down there, why don't you go ahead and subscribe too, because we got a lot of crazy customs that we have coming up this year. Again, my name is Suheel with Feelgood Threads. If you guys enjoyed my work and appreciated what I showed you today, go to shopfeelgood.com. You can check out all my work there.
I'm the wrong one to rob. In the jungle, I'm Nas. In the label, I'm Russ. In the trap, I'm Rick Ross. I took my roof off at the red light. I took my roof off at the red light. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap. I took my roof off at the red light. I took my roof off at the red light. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap. Brown bag legend cause it's all cash. Brown bag legend when it's all cash. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap. Trap, 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 trap.